that's a story for another day. In fact, Shannon Haggett did attend that meeting, and he was listed there, but not as the vice chair. So that correction, the word's been passed on to Ellie, and I'm sure she's captured that.
Unless you want it, Nancy.
Yeah.
I was emphatic.
Great. So with the exception of that, what we'll call a friendly amendment, are there any comments about the minutes? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve them. Motion to approve from Nancy and second from Shannon. Discussion? All in favor of approving those minutes, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. And opposed and abstentions. Okay. Good. We're opening the floor to public comments. So everyone on this call, plus any others that are joining, are welcome to raise your hand, and you'll be given a few minutes to talk if you've got anything on your mind. Okay, let's move on to the meat of the meeting. I'm not going to have much to report here. My feeble excuse is I was away on vacation for a week or so, and so I'm claiming that I had no involvement in what was going on there, and so it'll all be a voyage of discovery for me on this meeting. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but I did miss a meeting, executive committee meeting that Ellie and the rest of the executive committee did hold. So we know a lot of things have happened. The only one item I wanted to report on was that Shannon and Ashley did attend the Virgin's Energy Fair on Saturday, and sounds like it wasn't an overwhelming turnout, but there was a turnout, and so there was an opportunity to for our representatives to speak with the community about what we're doing. And so thanks a lot to Ashley and Shannon for that. Shannon, our vice chair, to thank Shannon, our vice chair, for doing that. So, and we'll leave that at the extent of my chair report this time. Let's move on to operations, where things get a little bit more interesting. BEAD, I'm thinking, Ellie, if you're available, if you could kind of catch us up on what, if anything, is going on in the world of BEAD.
Sure. So we are heavily into the permitting and grants section of BEAD. So if you will recall, one of the things that we need to do in order to break ground is to receive our NEPA approval. And in order to receive our NEPA approval, the very first step is to take our project and break it into different sub-projects, in order that we're not waiting to start anything on getting approval for that we've ticked the boxes for everything that's required for everything. So we had planned for a very long time to have 3 different NEPA project areas for our build, and then a 4th one for the portion that WCVT is building. So worked through that. There was a couple of requirements we had to have. We needed to submit the essentially GIS records of the new mainline construction that will be built, and we needed to provide some very detailed descriptions of exactly what we're building and the methodology we'll be using. And then we also had to provide a list of the broadband serviceable locations per NEPA project area. So there's actually quite a lot of back and forth between ourselves and Waitsfield and the GIS engineer that we use for Fukuda, and the VCBB and the VCBB's consultant RSM, just to make sure that we understood all of the right requirements and we're doing things properly. And we actually had to make a modification at I won't say the 11th hour, but very near the end, to change the boundary of the NEPA project area that represents the town of Ripton, because there is a requirement called independent utility, which means that you're not allowed to have a section that couldn't exist on its own, essentially. So we had to change the boundary of the Ripton NEPA area to move a little bit west along 125 to connect with our existing fiber ring. So that modification allowed it to pass the independent utility test, which is, I'm glad that RSM caught that, because that would have been a delay getting to the NTIA, getting to NEPA. So it was really a minor change, and has nothing to do with anything from an engineering standpoint. These boundaries simply represent the different logical areas that we need to go through for a permitting perspective. And we can't start the aerial work in any of them until we receive the NEPA sign off on the categorical exclusions in those areas. So that was all done and submitted last week. So that was good progress. We also, since the last governing board meeting, we received a draft of the grant agreement, which was 84 pages long. And then, no, I'm not kidding, and incorporated by reference other things that were hundreds of pages long. Still in the process of reading all of that. And then there was a 2-page document that is our scope of work. And so the scope of work, that was the thing which is obviously of the most importance to make sure the details in that are correct. So again, between Waitsfield and VCBB made a couple of tweaks. I mean, the first draft that we got from VCBB was almost exactly correct. There was just 1 or 2 things missing, and we made a couple edits for clarification. So that has been submitted, and the VCBB announced today in public session that they are busy trying to work on finalizing that grant agreements and get them over to the Public Service Department. So that is progress. And then the final thing was we received last week, I forget what day, but we received a request from the VCBB to complete a BEAD budget template, which outlined all of our expected costs at a, I won't say extraordinarily detailed level of detail, but a quite detailed level of detail. So I've done the best that I can. I'm actually literally about 5 minutes away from wrapping that up and sending it off. And that is, I'm not entirely sure what is going to happen with that document, but it's a request that we've received, I think, amongst other things, probably simply to validate our BEAD budget. So that has been a good exercise. And also I took from it not only just ticking a box because it's been asked of us, but it's a good opportunity to pull into one place all the different things that we have either spent to date or have contracted to date, and just review all the project costs. So I think that was useful, and we will see in due course what bids we get back for construction. So I think the final thing to report is that, as you guys know, Steve and I have been working for a very long time now with JSI, which is our engineering firm, to work on completing detailed design for Middlebury and Ripton. That's still in progress, but we have moved to the front of their queue a compilation of all the different construction units, because that is the methodology that's used to create an RFP for construction, a construction bid package. So we're identifying how many feet of 24-strand cable need to go up, for example, how many feet of buried fiber in this size conduit need to go in. And so making sure that the quantities there are not, I won't say 100% complete, because as the detailed design is still working, there will be some slight tweaks, but it's going to be in the range of 98 to 99% accurate and complete. And so that is definitely good enough to start to put out a construction RFP. So we discussed this last week with JSI, and then over the course of this week, once I finish with the BEAD budget submission, I'm going to be working on drafting a construction RFP, and then we'll be having that through internal review with Steve and with WCVT, and then over to JSI. And just so that's really our next step, is to get that out there into the market so that we can start the construction bid process. And then going hand in hand with that, but sequencing a little bit behind it, because we expect it's a little bit less of a complex of an RFP, and hopefully won't take quite as long for people to bid on, is the construction oversight. But those two things really need to go hand in hand. And I think the only editorial comment I'll make is that because of the complexity of BEAD, we've put out construction RFP and construction oversight RFPs before, but what's new here is we want to make sure that our bidders have a heads up as to what are the special BEAD requirements that we're needing and requiring and expecting them to comply with. So some of the things that they haven't, like for example, BEAD requires Davis-Bacon, which relates to fair wages for employees. So we need to make sure that that's understood and that's included in the pricing. And then again, specifically as it relates to BEAD, we need to make sure that every piece of, and I've talked about this before, so I won't belabor the point, but every single piece of material that we purchase for BEAD needs to be Build America, Buy America, BABA compliant, and we need to be able to prove that what we installed in the field that was funded with BEAD was the BABA materials and not other materials. And so we need to make sure that we have the documentation and records at every single step of the process. So we're aware of this, and it's good that we now have the grant agreement that can help elucidate and document and define what are all the different things that we need to do here. And WCVT is also working on this from their side because they're going to have to comply with the same things. And we actually, Steve and I just had a call this morning. I had a couple of calls speed related this morning. And one of them was with Roger Nishi, and he was mentioning that the woman who actually does our inventory management, excuse me, she does their continuing property records, and so she has some thoughts as well about what the requirements are of the contractors, things that we haven't done in the past that will be required to meet the BEAD requirements. So we're compiling all of this. I've asked to get her first thoughts in the next couple of days, just to make sure that we can include that in the draft RFP. So lots going on, lots of progress behind the scenes, although from a public standpoint, it's still the same old, same old. And one thing I will say is I've received a couple of mails, both from governing board members and members of the public, asking specifically, when are we starting BEAD construction? When is my area getting built? And so I thought it would be good just to take a minute or two to talk about what is the party line that I've been communicating. And so we do have up on our website, there is a blog post that's talking about the BEAD timeline to date and just outlining how many years, it's literally been years we've been working on this, where we are, what's coming next. It was last updated in April, and there haven't actually been any public facing updates since April. But the facts remain as they are, that we're not going to be able to break ground until we have got the NEPA sign off, we have a signed grant agreement, and we've received the BEAD compliant materials. And then obviously also we've completed our procurement for services that meet all of the BEAD requirements. So basically what that translates to is I'm telling people that if all goes well, we hope to begin construction by the end of the year. And then for most of the areas we're looking to build, I'm saying that we hope that we'll get them done next year, because I feel like, with the exception of Ripton, I think that's pretty reasonable. That's our best guess right now, but I do my best to couch that with there's a lot of dependencies, and until we actually get going, we won't know for sure. But I just thought it was good to talk about that here, because that way it gives people some sense of what's going on, because we can't be super specific, and we want to make sure that we don't set expectations that are unreasonable that we can't meet. But it's also a little bit disingenuous to say, well, we have no idea, right? I mean, we want to be transparent in our communications. And so that's why I thought I would take a few minutes today to talk about how I've been communicating that. And if anyone gets any questions from residents or constituents or anything, please feel free to email me if you want any more specifics, but that's basically how I translate everything back out. You're muted, Steve.
Thanks, Ellie. Any questions for Ellie on this topic? I'm going to add that we had a brief discussion about this recently. The level of granularity that's going to be required for the construction we're doing is amazing. In particular, every segment of cable that we're installing has to be recorded as to was it to confirm that it was Build America, Buy America, and it's also been confirmed by an oversight body. So there's a lot of work that's going to need to be done as we progress through construction. No questions? Thanks, Ellie. Let's just
Rich has a
move then,
question,
Ellie.
Steve. Rich Warren.
Oh,
Yeah,
Rich.
can you use BEAD money for overhead for doing what you just talked about, the log, all that stuff, or you got to use funds from other sources?
Absolutely, we can use BEAD money to fund that. BEAD money or match money.
And the next question is sort of, I don't know, touchy, but when you, I mean, it's like, I don't know, I don't think it's an executive session kind of question. I just asked kind of briefly, when you get all these answers to questions on how the progress is going, I imagine you have to be sort of careful how you answer that with competitors in mind, or you don't just answer it anyway.
That's a great point. I mean, I answer it anyway. The reality of the matter is that if you think about our direct competitors in the areas that we're building with BEAD, there is Comcast, and there's Consolidated. And they both have their own build plans. And number one and number two, they're both already licensed on the utility poles we're going on. So the day we put in our make ready applications, they know, number one. And number two, they have access to the public information of what BSLs we've been awarded. So they don't necessarily know the exact routes, but they could figure it out if they cared. But quite frankly, having worked for big telcos, I can tell you, I don't think they care as much about what we're doing as we might think they care about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, and the reality is, like, they're going to build whatever's in their plans, regardless of what we do or when we do it. So our interest is just in trying to get these things built as quickly as we possibly can, so that ideally we can be first to market. And if that's not possible, at least we can be a fast follower, and more importantly, that our residents and constituents are aware of what's going on. And I have to tell you, I don't field a huge number of these things. I mean, it's probably like under 10 a week, but people who've been waiting for a very long time, I feel very badly that I can't tell them that we're starting construction tomorrow, even if we had all of the materials. It's a very difficult thing to say, no, I'm sorry, I know that your internet is very poor, but we're not going to get to you until next year. But that is the reality. So my urgency is around trying to bring service to people more than it is competitors. And honestly, I don't lose any sleep or really any time thinking about what the competitors do or don't know about our build plans.
Okay. And regarding Shannon being there at the table at the Virgins Energy Fair, he was joined by Ashley as well. So just want to give credit for that. I was there as
That's a superstar table manning.
Yeah.
Our head of marketing and governing board member and our Virgins rep.
Yep. I was a customer there to add to the warm bodies there.
Amazing. Well, we'll cover that later when we get to the marketing update. I will turn over to Ashley. Let her talk. Okay. Yeah, that's all that I have on BEAD.
Well, Ellie, while you have the floor, why don't you give us an update on 2026 construction?
Okay, so the 2026 construction, I've been working with the executive committee to narrow down what are the areas that we wish to have constructed, and I have compiled a bill of materials for those. I mean, just as I mentioned earlier, that JSI is doing for our construction bid package. I have those for ARPA now. I'm working with Syracuse to be able to identify, to confirm if they're able to do the work, and if so, what the cost is and what the time frame is. And there's a couple of other nuances specifically around making sure that we have enclosures, pedestals, and splice cases. So I've been working through those details, and I was hoping that I would be able to have a proposal to bring to the governing board tonight. I do not, and there's enough variability. I don't want to ask for a broad latitude to spend an unknown amount of money. And realistically, this work is not going to be starting before the July governing board meeting. So just, given where we are and the fact that Syracuse's crews are busy. So we'd be looking at a August, September start anyway. So getting this done in July, because we don't have the governing board meeting in August, I don't particularly want to call an emergency meeting to do a procurement. So that's the update on that.
Could you help us understand the distinction between the 2026 construction that you were talking about and BEAD?
Sure. Thank you, Steve. So for context, we have, we'll get to the financial update with the dashboard in a little bit, but we have, if memory serves, about $900,000 of ARPA money remaining, which needs to get spent this year. And not all of that is going to be spent in construction. Some of that is spent in other things like marketing and overheads and insurance and audits and whatnot, as well as some engineering work. But some of that we plan to use to do some additional construction work. And because it's ARPA funded money, the work needs to happen and the bills need to be received and paid this calendar year. And I will also say, because it's kind of it's not related to 2026 construction, but it's related to the closeout of the construction grant, that earlier today I sent over to the VCBB the as-built, the electronic as-built records that are required under the grant in the same exact format and schema as we had for the phase one. So again, great working with Todd Garthafner over at WCBT and his team. So I had a look at those and validated those late last week, and I had one final question for him today that he answered. So I passed those over to the VCBB staff, and I asked very clearly what exactly are the remaining items that we need to provide in order to have close out that we've met all of the grant requirements for the ARPA construction grant. And I also asked very explicitly, what are the requirements for providing financial records? Because it's a long story, but we haven't provided any for the last 18 months because there wasn't a facility to provide them. There used to be one, and then they switched grant management platforms, and we have all the records, but we haven't provided them because we haven't been given a facility to provide them. And I don't want to be in a situation where we are in a fire drill to provide 18 or 21 months worth of records when we might be busy with something with BEAD. I want to get ahead of that. And so I'm asking the question now to understand what that looks like.
Other questions for Ellie? Hey, I've got one item for affordability programs, and then I'll ask Ellie to cover any other items. As you may be aware, and hopefully you are aware, we're in the thick of providing services to those addresses that are costly, require significant cost to extend our service to their dwelling. In particular, for example, subscribers maybe a couple thousand feet from the main drag where our pole is, they can't afford necessarily to put in 2,000 feet of conduit, and as a result, short of some miracle, which we're facing right now, they could never get our service. So what's nice about this program, the Affordable Long Draw program, is that we did receive a grant from the VCBV to defray the cost, a fixed amount, so it's not open-ended, but we do have a program we're currently involved in, wherein as a interested subscriber signs up, informs us that they're willing to participate in the Affordable Long Draw program. I do have a couple slides here. So we don't need to cover each one of these items, but I think of consequence, I talked about item 2, Alex Kelly, we've hired as a contractor exclusively supporting the Affordable Long Draw program. He goes to the books and identifies whether or not the location meets the criteria, financial criteria. And when Ellie applied for this, she opened that wide up. So it'll be really easy for most everyone to participate in this program. Once the subscriber or potential subscriber signs up, Alex engages a cabling contractor, Eustace Cable Enterprises. They work up pricing. Once we know what the approximate cost for extending service to the subscriber, Alex reaches out to the potential subscriber and offers them a contract service agreement that they must sign that recognizes that they're going to receive the long drop underground and that they must commit to a fixed amount of Maple Broadband service for a limited amount of time. And from my perspective, it's very reasonable. So once that's signed, we have there's no obstacle to proceeding, and so at that point, we reach out to the DigSafe, as you may know, they're the entity that goes around making sure that if you're going to dig a trench, you're not going to cut somebody's surface off, and then at that point, Eustace goes out and does the installation. This is kind of the update on the progress. Alex and Ellie are pretty disappointed with these numbers so far. The program has been going for probably overall about a month. We've got a lot of qualified potential subscribers. Not enough site surveys have been done. We're working on getting that corrected. 7 of those 37 have already signed the contract, so they've got the go-ahead. And probably the very first build that's going to be under this program will happen, fingers crossed, tomorrow. The grain center at the intersection of 22A and 7. They built a structure there. It's hard to see when you're tooling down 7, but if you kind of look over your shoulder, sometimes you can see that building. That's a grain center that's kind of been in the works for quite a long time. And our usage, we expect to be out there tomorrow to begin digging a trench to extend the service to that grain center. So that'll be our first subscriber. Alex and I are going to be working pretty aggressively to kind of find some ways to streamline the process. There is a deadline on this, and I think that this is something we're not sure that that's going to be applicable, but really what it means is that if the funds that are available must be all expended currently by September 30, which means the interval between our being contacted and the completion of the installation is reasonably going to be at least a month. So we don't have that much time to get this all done before all that funding evaporates. Now, we do understand that there's an effort at the VCBB to extend that. So we're tracking that really closely. Hopefully it's extended out. I think I heard at one point being pushed out maybe 6 months. That would be wonderful. That would give us all this summer to get it done and really do what we need to do to kind of leverage interest in this program, which is, it's multiple benefits. It helps reduce the cost for us, our potential subscribers to receive our service. It also gets us new subscribers. So it's kind of a win-win situation from our perspective. Ellie, what have I missed?
I think you got most of it. I think just a couple of clarifications is this one it's a fixed amount subaward, and so we get paid as we hit milestones. And so the important thing is whether or not we hit the milestones by September 30th. And the milestones, some of the early ones relate to, there was one on signature, and then there was one on for completion of submission of a project plan. And then the rest of the milestones are based on the completion of the drops. And so that's really the concern, is if we don't get the drops completed by September 30th and can't prove that we have. So it's a little bit different than spending the funds, which is the way that our ARPA construction grant works, which is a reimbursement-based grant. But Steve's absolutely right. And they're talking about extending it because this is funded by ARPA capital projects, and the completion date for all of the ARPA CPF is supposed to be the end of this year. And the date is the date unless and until it's extended. But I am feeling pretty confident that it will be extended because the U.S. Treasury gave a blanket extension as long as you can provide a good reason why you require an extension. So that would be a 6-month extension through, as they announced today in the VCBB meeting, through the end of June of 2027. And what is not clear is what's going to be our date to be completing, because the date that they've given us now is end of September, and that's 3 months before. So it's not entirely clear how much time is going to be required for the administrative closeout between the VCBB and the Treasury. So because it's helpful to have an extension, but if that extension is when the ground is frozen, it's less helpful. So we'll have to see, because the difference between if this one works the same as the current ARPA CPF, then our completion date is going to be March 31st, which gives us a little bit more time. It gives us October, a portion of November, maybe a week or so at the end of March. But so we're going to have to see how that one plays out.
Well, while you have the floor, Ellie, can you tell us about other affordability programs that are in play right now?
Sure. So last month we had 11 people receiving the LEAF subsidy, and that shows up in the dashboard as well. And then on the Nonprofit Connect, we have only one nonprofit so far that has filled out the form and qualified for that. So if you know any nonprofits that are in our service area, please let me know. We have a couple of refinements to the T's and C's around that program to make sure that it only reaches the intended recipients. And then the executive committee did vote to extend the Nonprofit Connect to municipalities with a couple of guardrails we're going to put in place. And so I need to meet with London Middlebury, our marketing firm, to work through the details of that and then talk about how we communicate it, which will probably be a direct communication to our towns, but also some public communications, because there may be some municipal entities like water districts or sewer districts or other eligible entities that we're not necessarily aware of from being our member towns or our friendly local regional planning commission.
Yeah, I think Municipal Connect is going to be very successful when the time comes. And one example would be, we're building out in Ripton and Middlebury. Currently, they may not be using Maple Broadband, but they're going to, when the time comes and we're serving that area, they will reap the benefits of that Municipal Connect program in terms of reduced rates and things like that. So I'm very optimistic that it's going to, once again, kind of juice our subscription numbers. Other questions for Ellie or me regarding affordability programs? Okay. Marketing. Ellie, I guess you wanted us to direct this to Ashley?
Hello,
Ashley, you got it,
Awesome.
Ashley.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'll let Ellie at the end, I'll pass it back to you if you have any update on canvassing. But otherwise, yes, so Shannon and I had the pleasure of attending the Energy Fair together. This is an interesting event because we always, each year it comes up, there's a conversation of whether we can attend as far as like volunteer capacity and also the value of attending and seeking volunteers for the event. Shannon, pipe in if there's anything that you disagree with or want to add to. But Shannon and I had a great time talking about this in between folks coming to the table and really seeing the value of this event, especially with unofficial mayor of Virgins, Shannon, being behind the table. Because that also really showcased the importance of when we can having the delegates from that town volunteering at the event, because it makes it so much easier when you know everyone who's walking by, whether that's someone who's the bagger at Shaw's or someone who's on the energy committee. Those are just conversations that easily start where we can then continue into other conversations, and they bring folks into the conversations too. And it was really great seeing you there in person, Rich, as well. So I think previously we had kind of assessed these events as far as what potential new customers we can get out of them. And I don't think there was one person who walked by who we could have swayed to, or we could have converted into a customer, because they either aren't in our active service area or, I mean, I guess that's the number one thing, right? They're not, they don't live at a current passing. But we had a lot of folks that were waiting for us to come, and a funny subset of that were folks who are currently served by WCBT waiting for Maple Broadband to come, and we kind of had to break the news that we're not coming and we're already with our operating partner. But also current Maple Broadband customers as well, who had great things to say, and one who was saying that her service wasn't as great as she expected. And it's also really nice that our customers can know that they can talk to someone at a table, and we can escalate it from there. It's not that they have to go through a phone tree. So for the brand, I think it was absolutely phenomenal. But I also just really want to, Shannon, hopefully your head will fit into your little team screen after we've all praised you for your attendance at this event. But just the value of Shannon was really great. The other reminder from when I had my marketing hat on at this event was that timing is a really big factor for folks just becoming customers. And we had someone who received one of our mailers from last year. And right now, the way that we count that or calculate that ROI is how many scans do we have on the QR code, how many people signed up in our promotional period based on the geographical territory that we targeted with these postcards. But we had conversations where folks were telling us about how they were really frustrated with their former service provider, which at that point was their current one, and then got reminded of Maple Broadband at exactly the right time, and then it was the time to switch. But contracts are also a factor. And so when I think about Nonprofit Connect and really the minimal to almost no response that we've had with Nonprofit Connect, I think that contracts with their existing providers are a really big factor, which is it allows us to consider running campaigns for longer periods of time within this industry as well, and just always landing that message in front of them right when it's relevant to them. So I think we have a wonderful, we've had a wonderful spring and we're going into a wonderful summer of really beating that drum around community. We've shifted some of our advertising, our digital ad language to be more about the infrastructure that's built to stay and invested in the community, making sure we're seizing all those potential customers who are the lowest hanging fruit because they align with our mission. So you'll see some of that. And then so then folks are seeing affordability messaging, whether that pertains to them or not. They're seeing that commitment to community. They're seeing the nonprofit connect, and then they're seeing our infrastructure commitment as well. So that's the theme of the summer. And I think, yeah, I don't know if there's much more to add there, but it was great. And as I said to Shannon, when one commits to attending these events, it feels like, oh, I have to go do that. And then when we were there, I had to leave early and I didn't want to leave. I was like, shit, I think I stayed an hour longer than I had planned to anyway, because it was just really, really lovely and great company as well.
It
I
was a
should-
lot of fun, and yeah, we didn't sign anybody up, but I think, extending the brand and making it more prevalent and in people's faces was well worth the time. And it was, again, it was fun. Great company. Thank you, Ashley.
Yes, and I should add that Ashley is doing double duty on this on our monthly calls. She not only is working for London Middlebury, our marketing agency, but she's also Moncton's delegate. So we're getting extra use out of her when she's on these calls. It's much appreciated, especially since she's really close to the work that we're doing, reaching out to our community.
My pleasure. Thanks, Steve.
Anything you'd like to add, Ellie?
Well, just circling back to what Ashley had said, that we do have someone, so we contracted with a company called Green Mountain Fiber, which is a division of GWI, to do door-to-door canvassing to drum up interest in the affordable drop program. And I have a call with the person who was running marketing from their side is now on extended leave, so there's a bit of a gap in communication there. And I have a call set up for Wednesday to connect with the new person that's going to be in charge and get an update on what's going on there. But having looked, so the person who's going door to door has a spreadsheet where he records the result of every address that he went to and what the result was. And some of them he's managed to get sign up, but it's kind of interesting that the vast majority either are not interested or they're with the competition and aren't interested. And so one of the things that I want to do with London Middlebury when I have a chance to meet with them is to actually go through this and talk about the results and talk about what we do with the results and what learnings we get. Because one of the purposes of this was specifically to drum up interest in the affordable drop program. But one of the other goals is just to understand in general from talking with customers or prospective customers what the situation is. And some of that may be geographic and regional, and some of that may be general. And so I think it's just a form of market intelligence and voice of customer to hear what some of the responses are we're getting.
Excellent. Any questions on marketing from anyone?
I just wanted to add, I think we got a couple of sound bites in with the Addison Independent at the Energy Fair, where we made sure to also mention all of the affordability programs. So keep an eye out for that, hopefully in this week's issue.
Excellent. Yep. Keep our name in me bouncing around in people's brains. That's great. Okay, let's move on then to dashboard. I don't see Lynn. I'm guessing, Ellie, you're going to walk us through that?
Absolutely. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, can you see that?
Yep. Make it a little bit bigger, please.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So this is, as usual, this is an update on the grant cash balance through May 2026. So I did add this row down here so that we can easily keep track of how much ARPA money is remaining, knowing that we have, unless things change with specific grants, we have until September 30th to spend this money, because all of the grants that we have, with the exception of the Affordable Drop Program, are all reimbursement-based grants. So this one here is, this is actually adding up only these rows, which is the pre-construction, construction, town ARPA and town ARPA match, which is technically part of the construction grant. So that's the $900,000 that we have to spend between now and September 30th, as discussed earlier. So yeah, you can see the balances that are remaining there. The over here, scroll over a little bit, you can see the affordable drop program. As of the end of May, we were $11,167 in the red. We received our grant agreement in May. We invoiced in May for the first milestone, and that amount was actually received a couple days into June. So as of now, we're in the black, but as of the end of May, we were in the red. So I wanted to give that update so that you guys weren't wondering what was going on with that. And then finally, this is the federal match so this is how much money we've spent on BEAD to date, essentially, because this is the federal match for the BEAD program. So we've spent $88,706 in BEAD-related activities, and we're still awaiting instructions from VCBB about how to return the $19,910.96 for the BEAD subrecipient capacity grants that we need to return to them, because we drew down more than we were actually able to expense against that grant. So that is the grant cash situation. Are there any questions? Okay, I'm going to move us then to the operations tab, which I will make bigger. So year to date, we have $332,905 in total revenue, of which most is broadband and services. Not much to report there. And the mileage with service and the new installations is largely tracking the most recent business plan or business model. I think the only deviation here is that I had assumed that we would have, I want to say it's like between the range of like 10 or 12 new installations in the month of May as a result of the affordable drop program. And that obviously didn't happen. So those assumptions are slightly off. What I did is I took the total number of drops that were funded in the affordable drop program, cut them in half, and then made a guess as to how many would actually happen in each month in order to hit our subscriber numbers when I updated the business model. So it was a guess, and it's not going to be accurate. But the good news is we had 12 new installations unrelated to the affordable drop program. So that's good. That's a big change over the 4 the previous month. So quite happy with that. And our active subscribers was sitting at 696 at the end of the month and is now over 700. So that's good news. And we either have put out already a social media post or will be soon, but that's going to be in our newsletter. We've updated the CrowdFiber landing page and so on and so forth. So that's a nice milestone. And LEAP recipients is still at 11, as I mentioned. And the average revenue per user, amazingly, is exactly the same month over month. I thought the number might have not been updated, but it actually was. We had a change in the product mix and a drop off in the number of people that ordered phone service. So kind of a fascinating little stat there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I have to report. Take rate is, 18.4%. Any questions on the operational statistics? Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Willie. I think over as the months progress, there'll be more topics and more expansive matters to discuss as we work our way through these details. But I think kind of the key message for our governing board is that there's a lot of intermediate steps that are kind of not visible to our governing board that need to be accomplished and need to be checked off and need to be approved by outside parties like the VCBB, et cetera. So there's a lot you don't see. And so I think the good news for me is that while Ellie's projection right now for BEAD funded construction may not start materializing until near the end of the year, we do have in mind spending that ARPA money this year so that our communities can continue to see Maple Broadband vehicles out there, installing service, connecting subscribers. I think that's what I'm most interested in personally is I think once BEAD happens, we're going to be swarming the place. But right now, I think what I'm most interested in is making sure that our community is aware that we haven't fallen asleep and are no longer engaged in our responsibilities. All right. Oh, Chris.
Yeah, just one quick clarification. I think I already know the answer to this anyway, but the reason we can't use the ARPA money to do BEAD is because the well, I don't want to get okay, feel a little sensitive here, but the addresses that we used for the BEAD grant are fixed, and so we can't use the ARPA funds for those things. Is that generally correct?
Uh, it's not that so much as that we're not allowed to start any BEAD related construction until we get the NEPA sign off. And so if we do, I mean, so if we were to get the NEPA sign off tomorrow, we could theoretically use the ARPA money and further into BEAD construction at our own cost and risk. And so one of the other constraints as well is that we want to put everything out together in a construction contract for efficiency. And so we don't have enough ARPA money to pay for all of BEAD. And if we ask for only a section of BEAD to be built, we'll be paying more per unit than we would if we were asking for a larger quantity. So that's really why. If we had the BEAD agreement in hand and the NEPA sign off in hand, and ideally if we had that a couple of months ago, then we would be doing exactly that, using some of our ARPA money for portions of the BEAD project that are not eligible or as because cash is fungible, essentially. But one of the other things as well is that we can't, just to be very specific, we can't double dip. So we can't, because ARPA is a federal funding program and then BEAD's a federal funding program. So we can't fund something which is being funded under BEAD with ARPA money, but there are activities that are related that I was ideally hoping to spend some of the ARPA money on, but the timing has been delayed to the extent where that's no longer possible. So good question.
Yeah, it could be subject to change too. Nancy.
Yeah, I feel like I should know this, but I don't. Ellie, are you pretty confident that we can spend the 894,000 that must be spent by September 30th? Are you pretty
still? I'm not worried about it at this point. I will be more confident when we have some of the, because Nancy, as you know, the mix of what we're planning is a mix of aerial and buried. And so until we have the pole licenses in hand and until we actually have a signed unit price sheet from Syracuse, it's still subject to change. But at this point, I'm not concerned.
Oh, good, because if you're not worried, I'm not worried. Thank
Very
you.
good. Don't lose sleep over this.
Okie dokie.
And also, as previously mentioned, we do have engineering work, some of which is unrelated to BEAD and some of which is related to BEAD that would not necessarily count as duplication of federal funding, depending if we make sure that we get the rules right. So no matter what, that money is not going to go back, if that's what your actual concern is. We will not be returning $1 to the U.S. Treasury.
Yeah, there's a lot of granular design work going on. Elliot said the detailed design, which is kind of the output from all the design work that our engineering firm has done, that's nearing conclusion. I think the one item that that's hard to kind of wrap your brain around is the fact that we've got part of what LA's planning involves is multiple pots of money that are going to be paid for from multiple sources as part of the construction we're doing. And the part of, in principle, to engage a cabling contractor to do this work is going to also necessitate that they abide by those pots that we've defined and bill accordingly so that we are managing the funds appropriately and in compliance with multiple grant and other kinds of requirements. So it's commendable work that Ellie's doing. I think it's going to be very helpful, and it's going to allow us to be very efficient on our expenditures. It sounds like you wanted to say something, Ellie?
Yeah, well, it gets back to what Rich was saying earlier, is that there are a number of expenditures that we can charge to the bead grant and that we will charge the bead grant. But if we need to, for example, charge them to the ARPA grant, we can do that. So there's a lot of things that we can charge either way. And so at this point, I'm making my best decision as I can about where to charge them. And then depending on how things shift around, then we can simply change because we're still in the middle of the financial year. And so until we get to the closeout of the financial year and get to our audit, we can move things between funding sources all we want. So that's another factor that comes in because, again, money is fungible and things like permitting and so on that we could charge to BEAD, we can absolutely use, for example, our town ARPA money to do that because that's in furtherance of the goals under which the money was donated. So it is important, and I am keeping track whenever I'm approving invoices to make sure that the payment source to which I'm assigning that invoice, it's actually an eligible use of that funding source. So hopefully things will come right quickly and we'll get the BEAD money in and we will be able to get the ARPA construction done to be able to maximize, because essentially there's not giving money back and then there's maximizing what you're doing with the money to make sure that you spend every dollar to get as much construction done as you possibly can. Those are two slightly different things. So I'm trying to do the latter, and if things don't work out exactly as I wish, then we will pivot to the former.
The other item of some complexity as well is the fact that our BEAD grant doesn't simply relate to construction in, for example, Virgins or Middlebury or whatnot. It also involves construction in towns that are served by WCVT. We hold that grant, and funds that money that WCVT must spend to do BEAD funded construction in their towns, those funds come directly from Maple Broadband. So there's also a level of accountability there that's part of what Ellie is working on to ensure that we got good record keeping on those types of activities. And also it's our responsibility to ensure that WCVT is performing in compliance with grant requirements. So we're also kind of the cop on the beat as it relates to that construction as well. So there's a lot to juggle there. We're grateful, as I'm sure you've heard me say many times before, that Ellie is very competent at doing these kinds of things, and it's great that she's able to juggle all these items in an efficient fashion. We're kind of moving towards the end of the meeting. I'm open the floor. If anything else you folks like to kick around, is your opportunity. Wait too long here. Maybe we'll be able to get out of here a little early. What would Nancy? How are we looking with? Oh, was there an update? Do we want to talk about this discovery you made, Ellie, regarding delegates passing from one year to the next? Is that something we can maybe save that for another discussion?
Up to you, either way.
Let's save it for another discussion. I think right now, Nancy, how are we looking for delegates? I mean, what's our list look like? Do we have any that we're waiting for appointments from any towns or anything? You're muted.
I think we've heard from everybody. I was double checking a few days ago on the last folks I either hadn't heard from or who said they were gonna let us know but didn't. And I think we're just now missing Whiting and Orwell. Is that right, Ellie? I think that's where we are.
That is correct. And actually, I was just in communication with Leslie Huston from the town of Waltham earlier because she was wondering what was going on and why she hadn't heard from us. And then I told her she'd not been reappointed. And she informed me that the two people who were appointed were members of the select board who probably did not intend to appoint themselves and did not actually wish to be representatives. So there may be a modification soon because we're in an awkward position because we did receive an appointment form listing two individuals who haven't been responsive and probably don't want the role. So Leslie is on it, and hopefully we'll be able to see her back soon.
Oh, good.
She's
great.
a great member of the governing board. That's the only update I have.
Anything from anyone else? Anything else you want to talk about? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn, Ashley.
Ashley, thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you guys in a month.